Oh yeah, King Emmanuel the seventh, yes. Loose and get it on your back, hear me out, alright, well, can't be good, be careful. Tell me if there is a good lion or a mad bad bull, well, can't be good, be careful. I leak them down, from a corrupt and them.
Hi, this is Ryan from Cannabis.com, and I'm here to tell you about why Bitcoin is the perfect solution for marijuana dispensaries. You can learn more at xcannabis.com and kind of follow along in the links below this video if you're watching at YouTube. There is a lot of non-cannabis businesses that have switched to Bitcoin. It is a huge economy, multi-billion-dollar economy, millions of users, and there is certain advantages to Bitcoin that a marijuana dispensary would enjoy. And I'm going to make it very simple and basic. I'm going to give you some links here as I go, and you can follow along with those links. But first of all, we saw how the IRS has attacked people like Harborside and other businesses for tax evasion or money laundering or a number of other things. Beyond that, banks have rejected to do any business with marijuana dispensaries whatsoever. I remember Russ Belville and Celeb Stoner and a bunch of others that had, and Mayo Keefbox, a bunch of these marijuana-related businesses have had PayPal reject them for even doing raffles or donations for marijuana-related charities. And a lot of charities for this purpose, and not just for marijuana charities, but other charities have moved to Bitcoin to avoid the government regulations that make it very difficult to run a charity. Let's see, Representative Mark Warden, recently done a story about him. He has switched to, he's an incumbent representative of the House of New Hampshire, and he is during his campaigning has accepted Bitcoin for his campaign contributions. So look up State Representative Mark Warden from New Hampshire. A lot of different advantages though, beyond the IRS auditing, the money laundering issue, bank rejection. There's also a gray area, whether Bitcoin has value or whether it doesn't. Is it considered a currency or is it considered, information? Because all it is ones and zeros. So, there's no tangible bill necessarily, unless you can create those. You can create paper Bitcoins, and I'll go into more detail about that in a minute. However, Bitcoins themselves have no tangible reality. I mean, they are just ones and zeros. They're basically just mathematical equations in a computer system. Problems that are solved, creating a hashtag that mint the Bitcoin, and there's no tangible value to them whatsoever. So, accepting digital information in exchange for cannabis or whatever product, whether it be a donation for a charity or whether it be in exchange for medicine or for whatever reason, it's not considered a currency as far as I understand it by any government. It's basically just ones and zeros. It's information. It's digital data. And so I don't think there's any issue with the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. Article 1 of the Constitution talks about the Commerce Clause, and Article 6, the Supremacy Clause, and all of that. A lot of that has to do with financial transactions, where the federal government can override state laws and declare dominion over transactions based on the Commerce Clause, even despite the 10th Amendment and state laws making one thing or another legal. The federal government can say, oh, well, that's a financial issue. We have dominion over that. So therefore, we're going to go in and arrest these people or indict these people. The biggest case that defined this was Gonzalez versus Rage, and that case in Oregon made this a pronounced issue for marijuana dispensaries. You can learn more about that. Just look up Gonzalez versus Rage, and I'll put that at the bottom. You can look up what happened with Steve D'Angelo in Harborside in Oakland, California, where the IRS audited them for $2.4 million. Also relating to the Commerce Clause, the laws in the federal government for the IRS and their dominion over taxing and transactions relating to sales and net profit and things like that. So there's a lot of reasons why Bitcoin has an advantage over other currencies for just these purposes. But there's a bigger issue involved here: the fact that governments typically manipulate currency, and when they do that, what they'll typically do is to pay their debts. They'll print out a whole bunch more money, and they'll pay their debts with that money. And a few years later, the currency that was already in existence will be devalued. So a dollar that was worth $1 in, say, 96 will be worth half of that in 2006, assuming that they've printed out twice as much money as they had in 1996. So say there's $1 billion in existence one day, and then the next day they print out another $1 billion based on nothing, just printing it, funny money, monopoly money. Well, what that $1 billion was worth previous, that first day, after that second $1 billion was printed out, making $2 billion total now, well, that first $1 billion is only worth half as much. So instead of paying $2.50 for a gallon of milk, you're now paying $5 for a gallon of milk, based on the money that you had to begin with. And so that's the problem with most currency, is that governments manipulate it. There's no cap on how many dollars the United States can print. They can print out endless amounts through the Federal Reserve System. And I've left a link in the bottom that explains the Federal Reserve System. It's a cartoony type of link. It's kind of an interesting video, and it explains it in depth, and I wish more people would watch that. It's a great video. But beyond, the endless printing of the United States dollar and the devaluation of it, there's also issues with counterfeiting and, inflating it that way, deflating the value by inflating the amount of currency. Well, the great thing about Bitcoin is that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin ever minted, ever. There will never be more than 21 million. Likely, there will be less, because when people lose their wallets, they have these little digital wallets. Say, for example, I kept my Bitcoin on this, and a lot of people do. They encrypt it, and they put it on a flash drive to make a backup of it, and sometimes they just keep their wallet on it exclusively on just one drive. Well, in that case, if they lose this, then say I had 1,000 Bitcoins on there, well, 1,000 Bitcoins are gone. Or it gets destroyed, or something happens to this. Well, so there will only ever be a possibility of 21 million Bitcoins, but we already know that many people have lost their Bitcoins. Their hard drive has been formatted accidentally. Things like that can happen, and you can lose your Bitcoin. But that means that there will never be more than, there's ever minted. Plus, when more Bitcoin get lost, that would, realistically make those Bitcoins that are in existence still worth more, because there's less to go around. So it stands to gain value. As we've already seen, back in May of this year, we saw Bitcoin, from March to May, we saw Bitcoin go from being about $7 of, worth of U.S. currency to being worth about $230 of U.S. currency. And now it's stabilized for the last 6 months at about $130, sometimes $140. But it keeps that value in a pretty consistent manner, about $130 to $140, and it has for about 6 months. But it's only gotten more valuable since it began in 2009, and it will only get more valuable. It cannot be counterfeited. I mean, it's next to impossible for it to be counterfeited based on the variability of what it takes to mint one of these Bitcoins, the algorithm and the hashtags that are created. It's next to impossible. It's very easy to, counterfeit a US dollar. It's almost impossible to counterfeit. I don't know that it is possible at all. I'm not going to say anything isn't possible, because everything is possible, and in a scientific point of view, but it's not ever happened yet, and it's not very likely that it ever will happen. So that gives the currency value, and that gives the security measures a stronger value over the US dollar and other fiat currencies. With Bitcoin, there's many ways to transact Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin payment gateways, and I'll give you a list of websites. You can see I've created this blog called XBT Trades at WordPress, and you can look at the long list, hundreds of sites that sell tangible items for Bitcoin. Real estate, gift cards, jewelry, gold, silver, all kinds of things, household items, furniture. I mean, you can buy almost anything with Bitcoin right now. And so I'll provide that list of hundreds, if not thousands, of websites that accept Bitcoin. But you can accept it in a store. There's point of sale systems that you can install that are made off of like a credit card transaction machine, a point of sales credit card machine. There's also software that you can use that people will scan their QR code to send money to a store, and then the buyer will get their item after they've sent the money with their wallet on their phone, basically. And it's a really easy process. It's just a matter of having an iPhone or an Android phone that has a Bitcoin wallet on it, and I'll demonstrate with my wallet here. And it makes it just really easy to see. For example, I don't have very many Bitcoin on this wallet, but you can see 2.55 Bitcoin is worth $338 right now. And so say I wanted to send a Bitcoin. See, this is what it does, is it uses this scan feature to scan a QR code, and then you can send the Bitcoin via that way. Like, for example, here's my QR code. If somebody wanted to send me Bitcoin, I would show them this. I don't know if it focuses that well, but I would show them my QR code. They would use their phone to scan it, and then they could send me Bitcoin that way. So, it's a very easy method of transfer. You don't have to have a wad of bills in your wallet, and you don't have to worry about, a lot of things if you secure your wallet properly. For example, if I wanted to secure my credit card, it would be very difficult besides locking it in a safe. I mean, somebody could take my card if they found it on the seat of my car or whatever, and they could go and start running transactions with it. With Bitcoin, you see, I have a PIN code that you have to use to be able to even get into it. And, with a credit card, you don't have to use a PIN unless you're using debit. You can swipe credit all day long, sign a fake signature, and someone can get away with a lot of money, creating you a lot of problems. With Bitcoin, it's a little more secure than that, in my opinion. Or with cash, if somebody saw cash on your, on your seat, it would be similar to Bitcoin, because if you lose your wallet and you don't have it backed up somewhere, then that money's gone. So in the sense of cash, that is sort of a problem. But if you use the blockchain system, you keep your money on an online wallet secured by a PIN, and then you can run transactions from an online wallet. So even if you lose your phone, you don't lose your Bitcoin. So that in that sense, it's better than cash. I'll show you a couple of these methods of accepting Bitcoin, including that credit card processor unit that I was talking about. But for marijuana dispensaries, there is a big market for being able to buy and sell things with Bitcoin. So if your customers are already using Bitcoin, it's easy enough for you to accept Bitcoin. And if you don't have any intentions on spending Bitcoin on items, then you can always cash it in for cash at a number of different exchanges. BTC-E.com is one of them. There's a lot of others, OKPay.com and a few others out there that you can cash your Bitcoin in and get cash deposits to your bank account from your Bitcoin. So, for a marijuana dispensary, you get the safety from the Commerce Clause and the federal government. You get the safety from somebody seizing your bank account, because you're your own bank. nobody can take this from you unless you give it to them. Say the feds come in and say they want to take your money. Well, if you've got your wallet encrypted, then they're not going to be able to get your Bitcoin. They might take your wallet, and as long as you have a backup, they still can't get your Bitcoin as long as it's properly secured. But they can't just go in, talk to a bank account manager, and say, hey, I'm the feds, I want to seize this guy's bank assets. They can't do that to you. Banks can't reject you for a bank account, PayPal, things like that, online banking systems like PayPal, they can't reject you. The IRS thing isn't an issue because it's not real currency, it's just ones and zeros. So there's a lot of advantages, and I wanted to explain this to people. There's more links at the bottom from people who have explained Bitcoin better than I have. I've given you a basic overview, but if you want to know the in-depth structure of how Bitcoin works, look at the links below or visit us at xcannabis.com and learn more information there. It's October 1st, 2013. The government is shut down. Whoopee. Guess they're not wasting as much money as they were before, but most government services are still available. So very few things have been shut down, but the government did shut down today. I haven't noticed. Anyway, peace out.